Tuesday, December 29th, 2020. Coming up in the news this afternoon, government finally comes forward with information about Grenlec the repurchasing of Grenlec shares. In the region, earthquake rocks parts of the Caribbean. Internationally, child killed following 6.3 magnitude earthquake in Croatia. And in sports, West Indies name Test and ODI squads for tour of Bangladesh. At this point, we say a special good afternoon to our viewers on GBN TV channel 7, 11 and 20. This is the first segment of the news, which comes to you compliments Bryden and Miners.
Ace and Napa means getting help when you walk through the door. Ace and Napa is variety and quality at the right price. Ace and Napa has everything you will need for the household, for your lawn and patio, even the highest quality paints, beautifying your home inside and outside. Just the right building supplies you need. And Napa, providing the best in automotive supplies and accessories. The guarantee is we are so much more than a hardware store. Ace and Napa on the Morris Bishop Highway and Cross Street in the city. Ace will always be the helpful place.
A special good afternoon to our viewers and listeners once again. Our top story this afternoon, government has issued a news release following about the repurchasing of Grenlec shares in US $63 million settlement agreement and receives additional 11.6% of shares. Live in studio with me at this point is the General Manager at Grenada Broadcasting Network, Mrs. Odette Campbell, to tell us more about the news release. Mrs. Campbell?
Good afternoon to you, Blossom, and good afternoon to all of our listeners and viewers, especially those joining us on GBN television and on our social media platforms. Well, this press release has only come in about 1 minute ago, so I have not had time to digest it. So what I'll have to do is to read it in its entirety. And the statement says, and I quote, "The government of Grenada has secured significant cost savings in the just concluded repurchase of shares in the Grenada Electricity Services Limited Grenlec as part of its settlement agreement with WRB Enterprises, which brings to an end the International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes, the ICSID arbitration case brought by the company. Through the $63 million settlement, which is $12 million less than the arbitration award, government has now regained control of the 50% shares sold to WRB in 1994. In addition, the government has also acquired the 11.6% shares which WRB purchased through an affiliate company and which was used to plow profits back into the hands of the company and its affiliates rather than into critical ongoing capital investment to maintain and improve Grenlec's generating capacity." Again, those are the words issued in the press statement. The release adds, government was forced into the buyback position when WRB initiated legal proceedings in 2017 following the passage of laws by the Parliament of Grenada to liberalize the electricity sector under a World Bank-funded OECS project. That project sought to diversify Grenada's energy sector to include renewables, thus enabling the country to meet its international commitments to reduce harmful greenhouse gases and to reduce the cost of electricity to support private sector development. The legal action by WRB was grounded in a clause in the 1994 share purchase agreement signed by the then National Democratic Congress NDC administration, which provided the company with a monopoly on the generation and distribution of electricity, a monopoly which also imposed restrictions on individuals and corporations seeking to generate electricity for their own use. The statement continues, the new National Party administration found this to be untenable, hence the decades-long battle to correct what it perceived to be a grave injustice for both individual consumers and the business community. According to the tribunal's ruling in 2019, based on the 1994 share purchase agreement, government was expected to buy back the WRB shares at the price laid out in the formula in the agreement, which had no bearing on their fair value, and which worked out to be about $64 million after WRB paid only $15 million for them. Inclusive of interest to date, the award would be about $75 million, a sum the government has been successful in negotiating downwards. Government and WRB subsequently entered into negotiations under a framework agreement which imposed confidentiality on the proceedings, barring both parties from issuing any public statement regarding the award, the dispute that led to same, the framework, or any negotiations between them pursuant thereto. A deadline of December 29 was set as the closing date for concluding the settlement agreement, and it was only on Monday, December 28, that WRB lawyers released to the government the important signed documents providing warranties and releases protecting the government from all liabilities that may be associated with ownership of the shares. In keeping with the spirit of the framework agreement, government sought to issue a joint statement with WRB, but the company proceeded to issue its own press release on the matter. Having now acquired majority ownership of Grenlec, and with the need for serious investment looming to maintain the company's electricity generation and distribution capacity, government has already approached the World Bank and the International Renewable Energy Agency to procure the services of a world-class management company to operate the utility, facilitate the divestment of the shares through public offering, and to advance the country's objectives toward greater use of renewable energy and achieving energy security, return reliability, lower prices, and greater access, including the provision of much-needed renewable energy-powered streetlights across the country. With the arbitration settled, Grenada can now move forward with the much-needed reform of the electricity sector, which is a key element of its transformation agenda as outlined in the National Sustainable Development Plan 2020 to 2035. And that is the end of the statement, Blossom. And I'm certain the analysts will be combing through every paragraph and will be dissecting some of the points put forward. As a journalist, one of the first thing that jumps out at me is the way this has been it has been coined. The opening statement is the government of Grenada has secured significant cost savings in the just concluded repurchase shares in Grenlec. We know that that is something that the opposition parties and some of the analysts who have been examining this have been talking about the fact that the company was awarded $200 million. The government is jumping in to say, listen, this deal is closed and we have been able to save significant sums. It goes through all of the details, and it is not before the penultimate paragraph that the question a lot of people have been asking related to who have you sold the company to, but what is being said in the ultimate paragraph, and I know there's a lot for people to consume, so if we could just probably dissect that part. It said that now that it has acquired the majority, it is now going to the World Bank and IRENA, that's the International Renewable Energy Agency, to procure the services of a world-class management company to operate the facility, and then to facilitate the divestment of the shares through public offering, and to advance the company's objective towards greater use of renewable energy. So the question of the people, there was chatter in the public domain that it was sold to a Chinese company. This statement does not bear out that it has gone to any particular person, but the government seems to be saying here, and remember, this only came in a minute before we went on air, so we've not had time ourselves to look into this, but the government seems to be saying this is not sold to anybody, because I think it's talking about the divestment of shares through public offering. And we know yesterday the political activists did talk about the fact that, this thing there should be national consultation. So it seems as though it's still a work in progress. From what you gleaned as a listener, what jumps out at you?
That what you spoke about is actually what jumped out at me. To me, the middle of the news release or the statement didn't really say much. It was just giving some background and just maybe fill in pages, for lack of a better phrase. But it still hasn't said to me exactly what the definitive or the final decision is. Today is the deadline. I guess they were waiting for the exact deadline to issue the news release, but I still have a lot of questions that I'm sure a lot of people have been asking, including one, where did the talk of the Chinese nationality or people or company come from? Two, exactly what we're offering or asking IRENA and the World Bank to do. And I have a few other questions as well. So this news release just lets me know that they're telling me what's happening, but it's still missing things for me.
And the discussion about the fact that there's this apparent hush-hush. We heard people saying it was sold in the dark of night, and that there was the closure of the discussions on Christmas Eve. And we did see the National Democratic Congress issuing a statement to that effect and to that belief. And when we were investigating this some time ago, we tried to get a statement out of WRB, and WRB said they pointed us toward the fact that there's a confidentiality agreement that was signed. The government alludes to this in this statement. It says, government and WRB subsequently entered into negotiations under a framework agreement which imposed confidentiality on the proceedings, barring both parties from issuing any public statement regarding the award, the dispute that led to same, the framework, or any negotiations between them pursuant thereto. So the confidentiality clause apparently weighed heavily on both sides and really barred them from saying anything, and I guess that had significant bearing.
I recall that as well, because when Minister Bowen appeared on To The Point just earlier this year, he did speak of both parties agreeing not to divulge any information. But since WRB's statement, well, I don't think it was a statement. To me, it was a circular for workers at Grenlec that was leaked to the public, and I guess that's how the information came out. And it's a little unsettling that we're hearing from others before we hear from the powers that be in the situation. But at least they've said something now, so let's see what happens. But
also, I think yesterday it is apparent, and I'm speaking subject to correction, it is apparent that WRB issued a statement yesterday because, and I think the government points to this in this press statement. It says a deadline of December 29, which is today, was set as the closing date for concluding the settlement agreement, and it was only on Monday, that's yesterday, December 28, that WRB lawyers released to the government the important signed documents providing warranties and releases protecting the government from all liabilities that may be associated with ownership of the shares. In keeping with the spirit of the framework agreement, government sought to issue a joint statement with WRB, but the company proceeded to issue its own press release on the matter. So, what do you think could be at play there? Both of us say we're going to issue a joint statement, but yet one party does its own thing. It gets a sense of bad blood? I think
it came from, not really, I think it came from public perception and public discussion. Because from what I conclude, following the release of the circular, which was meant for me for the workers at Grenlec, I know that it became public. I think they wanted to get ahead of it and say, okay, don't continue to discuss this is our side. And I think that is probably where they differ in the information that they released, that WRB sought to inform their employees before the word got to the public, whereas it was the other way around for the government.
But I mean, Blossom, if you look at this, right, consider that you own a company and I am your stakeholder as an employee. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be critical for you to tell me what is happening before even a joint statement is issued in the public domain? I need to know what my status is. So do you think probably that was nothing good order?
I think that's where the both parties differ in how they disseminated the information. I shouldn't have heard it on the streets or from WRB before I heard it from the people who control my money.
Well, it's quite possible, but somehow you kind of get a sense that, remember, there's been wrangling between these two parties forever for the last 26 years.
I was about to say that.
For the last 26 years, there's been bad blood. And so probably they've come as like, the blood bad, let's finish spilling all of the blood and let's probably dispense of this.
At this point, WRB has nothing to lose because they're out of it already. So you know what? Look, let me be done with that. Go into 2021 with that off my mind. They have nothing to lose right now. It's government that stand to lose, and right now they're not in the public's good eye.
Let's see what happens, but it's a lot to absorb. We'd have to crunch some numbers, get some of the analysts to go through some of what is said here that probably we can decipher. Just on the face of it, like I said, we didn't even have time to study because it came in just before news time, and we want to thank the government for issuing the information, at least so that the public could know, because the public have been clamoring for information, and that's our role here at the GBN, to disseminate information as it becomes available. So we see how that works, so that pans out.
Hopefully in the 7 p.m. newscast, we'll have more for our viewers and listeners.
Definitely.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Campbell. And thank you to our viewers for tuning into this special edition of the midday edition of News Usually on Just Classic. We say goodbye to our viewers. Listeners, stay tuned. More news is next.